Hello. Are we on? All right. Welcome. We're so excited that you're here with us today to Camp NaNoWriMo. We're going to be talking about editing and publishing. So we're very happy that you can join us today. So this is our final program for this April. We will be doing another one in July, so make sure you join us again. If you love writing, you're going to enjoy our July program as well. So today we'll be discussing editing and publishing, so feel free to ask questions in the chat and let us know, who you are, what you're working on, any questions you have. We'll be excited to hear from you. Can't hear you, Amy. I'm sorry. So we're having a little technical thing. So I'll go ahead and start. My name is Molly. I am the branch manager at the Crosby Library. And so I'm very excited to be here. My books, I've written and published 2 books. I've got a 3rd one coming out, hopefully in the next couple of months. So I'm really excited about that. My book are a series called the Pine Ridge series. And the first one is called Fun Run. And it was published in 2019. And Social Hour came out in 2020. And the 3rd one, Hazel Summer, hopefully will be coming out in the next couple of months. I think we're still having some technical issues. Okay, well, I'm sorry about that. Amy Campbell is also with us. She has just published her first book, and I want her to be able to tell you about it, but it seems that they're having some microphone issues. So again, if you're watching us, go ahead and type in the chat who you are, where you're from, and what kind of things do you like to write? Are you, do fiction, nonfiction? Do you like short stories? Do you sci-fi, fantasy? Or what is it that you really love to write? And if you're here today, I'm going to assume that you also, are really looking for a way to get published. So this hopefully will give you some information about how to edit and publish to get ready for your book for publication. So it's a very exciting process. It's also kind of a tiring process. And by the end, you may be tired of your own book, but that's okay, because it'll be perfect for others to enjoy by the time you are kind of sick of it and ready to move on. Let's see if Amy's on yet.
And I'm back. Can you hear me now?
Yay, Amy's here. All right. We're so glad you're here.
I have to call in my home IT, so thank you to my husband, Kurt Campbell, for assisting me today. Yay, thank you.
Love our IT guys.
Yes. He's not for the county, but he is for me, so that's awesome. So thank him for that. All right. So I know you were giving us some intros, Molly, so thank you for that. Did you get a chance to tell people what NaNoWriMo is yet?
We talked a little bit about, I guess I didn't. I mentioned it's Camp NaNoWriMo, but do you want to tell us about NaNoWriMo?
Yeah, so we'll give a little bit of background for those who are joining us who are unfamiliar with Camp NaNoWriMo. Some of you may have joined us in November for National Novel Writing Month, where the goal is to write a 50,000-word novel in 1 month. Camp NaNoWriMo is different because you can work on any type of creative project, not just a novel. You can work on revisions, scripts, stories, poems, or essays. All are welcome. Pretty much your goal is to just set a goal for yourself and write. So today we're kind of talking about more of the end leg of that journey, with talking about actually editing and publishing.
Yes.
So I know Molly was telling us a little bit about her book. So we're not only librarians, but we're published authors. So Taylor, if you'd go to the next slide, we'll show people what we've written.
Yes. I'm going to talk about my book a little bit, but there's a copy, or what it looks like, a Fun Run. It's available in book and also ebook.
Go back one more slide, Taylor.
One more.
Oh no, PowerPoint is misbehaving. Oh, my nice PDF is misbehaving.
There we go.
There we go. Okay, and as Molly was telling you, I am Amy Campbell. I am an epic fantasy author. So as you can see, my book Breaker actually just released this month. I have my copy here. I know Molly has her copy too.
I am reading it. I'm a little more than halfway done. It's very exciting.
And it's quite thick. It's 400 plus pages of lots of crazy adventures. And right now I'm currently working on the second novel in the series, but Breaker is available everywhere books are sold. It's also available in Harris County Public Library. So take a look if fantasy is your thing.
It's good. It's very good.
All right, so let's go ahead to our next page and we're going to start talking about editing.
All right. Yes.
You might be thinking that if you want to be a traditionally published author, why do you have to bother with editing something? Because publishing houses have editors, so why do you need to bother with editing? Why can't somebody else do that for you?
Right. And to be considered by an agent or a publisher, your work needs to be as complete and polished and edited as completely possible. What their editors are going to do is going to like take it to the next level that will really make it awesome. But you need to have it as much done and completed as possible.
Yeah, so let's take a look at some tricks of the trade that you can use to make your work the best that it can be. So let's go ahead to the next slide, please, Taylor. So as you'll see on this slide, there's a list of some different software that is available. A lot of these have free versions, and of course, the ones with all the bells and whistles usually have paid versions. Mm-hmm. So on the editing software list, which ones have you used, Molly?
I write pretty much everything in Microsoft Word, and so it already has some editing abilities in there. It lets me know when, you know, I misspell things or have some basic grammar errors, if I'm missing commas when I need them. But it's a pretty basic thing. I've used the free version of Grammarly. Mm-hmm. It can only handle so much at a time. So I can't copy and paste an entire novel, but I can do a chapter at a time. And then it will go through and give me new, you know, edits and things. It's very useful and good. I've used it a lot. So I've used Grammarly and the Microsoft Word. And also Microsoft Word allows you to listen to something. You can read out loud, which I found to be very, very helpful.
Yeah, auditory editing is really, really crucial because when you hear something read back to you, or even if you read it aloud, you really know if, you know, what you wrote works or not.
Yeah, you will read your own work 100 times and you'll miss basic things because you know exactly what it should say and you've already seen it. So it's really nice when I like it because the computer reads it, and even though it's a computer voice, mm-hmm. the computer will read every single word exactly as it is. And so you'll hear when there are misspellings or grammar issues, you're like, nope, that didn't sound good at all. So I really like that it's very precise that way.
And that's really helpful because you have to be careful. One of the typos I make, and you know, the word check and the grammar check sometimes won't catch it, is if I'm writing that like they tilted their head, but I typo it as that they titled their head, and the grammar checker is like, well, that's a word, it's a verb, it makes sense there.
Yes.
But when it's being read back to you, you're like, they titled their head, what does that even mean? You're like, oh yeah, they tilted their head, that was a total flub on my part. Mm-hmm. And I've done that like twice in my current work, and I look back at it and I'm like, oh my God, why do I keep making this typo? But the auditory editing is really helpful for that.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, and among those software, I've tried Grammarly, Hemingway, and ProWriting Aid. And like you, I had a lot of trouble with like the limit, because mm-hmm. Grammarly and Hemingway, the free versions, well, even ProWriting Aid, they have a limit on the amount of text that it'll kind of go through for you at a time. So what I did was I kind of tried all three of them to see which one I liked best, because every author's going to have a preference.
Mhm.
And I ended up going with Pro Writing Aid, also partly because they do all kinds of like, there's reports you can do. Something I liked because I used a lot of like redundant words. Sometimes it's got like a report where it'll like search for redundant words. And it's like, hey, you use this word like, or a version of this word, like 38 times during the scene.
Yeah.
And I do that a lot with like, it's really cool because it'll look for like words that have the same meaning, like think or thought. And I'm like, oh, wow, like I'm in their heads a lot, but they're like always thinking or having thoughts or this or that. So it'll find that and it's like, hey, you might want to do something different, wink, wink. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's a good idea.
That's a really good feature. Yeah, I find that I do that. And again, when I'm listening to it being read out loud, I'm like, I just said the same thing several times. So that's a good thing to recognize.
Yeah, I definitely do that. And I know like even like rereading my book, I'm like, how did I keep reusing like these same words and phrases? But I think as writers too, like we become more critical of ourselves. And like, I think we also think we used it 20 times, but then like we've reread the same thing 800 times. So, we're kind of multiplying it in our heads that way.
Yeah.
But as far as the auditory software, I used Edit Out Loud for Breaker. And I really liked it because I could load it up on my iPhone. And like, there was one Sunday in like February or March, one of them, like, so Breaker, if you listen to it, is like 11 hours of audio if you have the computer reading it to you. So I spent 5 hours one Sunday, like cleaning my house from top to bottom, listening to my book. But it was cool because like I would hear the computer like say something wrong. And I was like what happened there? So I could like open up the app and find what it just read that was wrong and make a little note to myself to correct it later. And then I could go back to like, cleaning the toilet, fun stuff like that.
That's great. I've thought about that. I'm like, I would really love to be able to listen to it when I'm not at home sitting in front of my computer. So that's a really cool app to have.
Yeah, I really liked it because I'm a big multitasker because I work 40 hours a week. I have kids, which I know you have kids too.
Yeah.
So it's like if I can get the most bang for my buck or my time, as it were, I'm all over that. So it's like, go for a walk at lunchtime. You could be listening to your book and editing it then.
Absolutely.
You're getting exercise, you're editing.
I need to do this.
Yeah. So like for me, like there was a small investment for Edit Out Loud. I think it was like $20 or so for the entire license. And I was like, oh, wow, like that's definitely worth it. So,
yeah. So what is that called again?
It's Edit Out Loud.
Edit Out Loud. Okay.
Yeah.
You've got it there on the slide so that we all know.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah, it's pretty awesome. And I think there's other ones out there too. But that's the one that I'm familiar with.
Okay.
Yeah, so let's move on to the next way that you can work on editing. Oh, sorry, back to the first slide. We still have stuff at the bottom. Sorry, Taylor. We'll tell you next slide, but not yet.
So another thing you can do is to use a beta reader or join a group of writers that will critique. A beta reader is somebody who will read your book for you and kind of give you your opinions, not necessarily an editor, although they can edit, but someone to just really kind of give you an opinion because, this is all great to me, but I'd really love to know what someone else thinks. And they can kind of help you find plot holes and things like that.
Yeah, beta readers are wonderful. And I know there's some libraries and, other organizations that have critique groups. I last did critique groups when I was writing, 15 years ago, back in the, mid 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
But back then, like, they're good, but people can also be kind of harsh. So I kind of prefer beta readers because I'm at the point where it's like, once I've written the words, I don't want people to be like, oh, I don't like the way this character is. I don't like this or that. It's like, I just need to know, does my story resonate with somebody? Did you find plot holes? Because, I might not see the forest for the trees, but somebody who's never read my words before is going to find those plot holes and be like, hey, you totally forgot to wrap up this detail. Like the character was hanging on the cliff. Like, are they still there?
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe they are. So I really love beta readers. So did you use any beta readers for your books, Molly?
I did not for Fun Run. Well, my mom. My mom
counts.
is also, she was a teacher for many, many years, an English teacher. So I felt very comfortable having her read it. And because she could also do some, also did editing, but she was a great beta reader. With my second one, Social Hour, I did ask a few more people to read it, and got some good information that really kind of helped me clean up what I was doing. And one of my characters wears a hearing aid, and I referred to it way too many times, apparently. So I went back and kind of, it wasn't necessary to refer to that so often. So I took it out, and I just hadn't thought about that. But she's like, you don't need to do that. So it was really nice to have that opinion and that bit of critique for me.
Yeah, I love that little character. I think it was the son who had the hearing aid.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I really liked that, because I was like, and I didn't feel like it was in there too much, so you must have taken it out the right amount. But I was like, oh, like there's like nice representation in there. That's like sweet, and it doesn't, overpower anything. It was really cute.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
And I use some beta readers too. What I ended up doing was, because I've been like just doing so much research on like, best practices for everything related to writing and getting published. With my beta readers, I think I had 12 or 13. And with beta readers, something for people to know is you might have a bunch of beta readers, but you might only hear back from like half of them. And that's totally normal, because people are busy. They have lives. They're doing it for you for free. Unless you pay for a beta reader, which you could do. But, as a new author who has money like that to just throw away, I didn't. So half of my beta readers responded to me. But what I did was I gave them a little like Google form survey thing, asking like, what things did you like from the story? What didn't you like? Who was your favorite character? What more do you want to know? And I got some really good responses from that. And it was very eye-opening, because it went from like, some people loved one character, and then other people hated that same character, which cracked me up and was hilarious. And then one other person was very honest, and she's like, this book and this genre is not for me. And I was like, you know what? I'm a librarian. That's cool. If this book is not for you, I'm totally fine with that. You don't hurt my feelings. So I really like beta readers for that reason, because they'll let me know like, hey, I'm on the right track with this mess I'm writing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I did join a group once, and this again was years ago. And I was working on a story that I had come to a total stop. I couldn't figure out what to do. You kind of have to figure out the end before you can figure out the middle. And I didn't know the end, and I was just stuck. I'm like, what are they working for? What are they trying to accomplish? And someone in the group kind of gave me some ideas. And from there, the rest of the story wrote out very quickly when I finally had that thing. So it was really nice to have someone to kind of talk things out with. So a critique group can be really good in that way as well, because they can kind of help you work out through some things that you just might be stuck on. So beta readers and critique groups, both very valuable to have.
Definitely. Yeah. I've got an alpha reader too, who, when I have all my plot ferrets, as I call them, when I can't get my plot ferrets to work out, I'm like, hey, this thing I wrote about, like, this is what's happening. Like, what do you, what do you think would happen to fix that? Or, what kind of wrench can I throw in it to make the plot happen? So yeah, it's good to have that kind of feedback.
Yes, absolutely is.
All right, Taylor, we can go to the next slide now. All right. So the next option for editing will cost you some money, and that is actually investing in a professional editor. But if you find the right professional, it can be very well worth your investment. And if you are serious about getting published, you will definitely want to invest in an editor. But you do need to be aware that there's lots of different kinds of editing, as you can see on the screen. So you'll want to be sure you do some research to see which one is the best fit for you. So for me, because I'm an indie author, I have, put all of my money where my mouth is pretty much. So I have paid for my book cover, I paid for my editing. So I did lots of, research into the different types of editing. So if you're somebody who you don't really like, you're having trouble with your plot, you're not sure if it works, like that's where you would want the developmental editing. And they kind of really drill down to see how your plot's working. For my editor, I actually hired somebody who does content editing, but her content editing was kind of like, it was like a buffet, because as she was going through my content, which that's like a little bit of developmental, but she also threw in like copy editing and line editing. So I feel like, for what I was trying to get, I got a lot of bang for my buck with the content editing. And my editor was fabulous because like she found like some plot things that my beta readers hadn't touched on.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up like actually like reordering some of the chapters and like changing things. So editors can very much be worth the investment you put into them.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really neat. I did as much editing as I could, and I used kind of a hybrid publisher, which we'll discuss later, but they had an editor. But the editor was basically kind of proofreading. There was some content, but there was no developmental editing. It was just mostly grammar and, word arrangement.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, so that was really good, but I still had to go back and re-edit. I reread everything after they edited it, and I did it again, and I'd resubmit it, and they'd kind of go through it again, and it went back and forth until we were both satisfied with the editing and the way it was turning out. So that was kind of a different experience. I didn't have to do that research. They provided it. But I see in our comments that Celeste Plu is watching, and she says that Breaker sounds interesting and she can't wait to read it. So
awesome. Hope you take a look at it, Celeste.
Yeah, welcome, Celeste. We're glad you're here with us.
Yeah, and also as a reminder, anybody who is listening in, if you have any questions about editing or publishing, feel free to put that in the chat. We would love to answer them for you.
Yes, absolutely. So, like, we said, just after every edit, you need to go back through it. So whether it's someone else, a beta reader, an editor, anyone who takes a look at it, you need to go back and do it yourself. Those editors are great, but you really want to make sure that you are happy with what's going on as well. So yeah, you'll probably get sick of reading your own book. But yes, it's going to be perfect when you get to the point where you're so sick of it, you can't read it again. That means it's going to be great, and everyone else will get to enjoy it.
But the thing with publishing, and anybody who's read any library book that's traditionally published, or any book at all, typos and things still get through. No matter if you're the only editor, they're going to get through. If you have 16 editors at Random House, you're going to have typos and things like that get through. I edited a Breaker like within an inch of its life, I'm pretty sure. And then when I finally had my paperbacks come, I was just like flipping through it. And then like in chapter 29, I found a typo at the very end of the chapter, and I was like, how did this get in there? Like, I've been through this so many times, so many people have had eyes on it. Like, how does it persevere? But I think it's like, the whole Jurassic Park thing of like life finds a way. Typos find a way in books. So
they do. Yeah, my fun run.
Be hard on themselves. Yeah.
Yeah, Fun Run's got one in the first chapter because it said lark instead of large. Lark is a real word, and we just kind of missed it. And they happen. It's okay. So
yeah, typos will get in there. Oh, it looks like we have a question. So Elizabeth Dickens Sargent asked, do we have any suggested places for writing classes or writing groups? And I will say a good place to always start is your local library to see what they might offer. For example, Bear Creek Library, we offer a program twice a month called Bear Creek Writes every Thursday at 4 p.m. You can find out more about that on our Facebook page. We would love to have more people come. And we're actually doing it virtually. So even if you don't live in the Bear Creek area, anybody's welcome. We have some people who don't live near our library who come, and it's great to have them. So we're hoping other people will join us. It's okay if you're not local. It's very possible that even when we go back to in-person programming, we might keep it virtual if there's people outside of our area, just because we want to have people take part with us, because it's fun to get together and talk writing and what people are working on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that is one nice thing about all this virtual programming and meetings, is that you don't have to be anywhere close by. You can join in. But yeah, so I look forward to being able to meet again with groups of people, because you really get that opportunity to talk. but it's wonderful that we have the virtual programs, and there are quite a few. I don't know of any others. I was part of one pre-COVID, but they have kind of gone inactive, and I'm trying to do some things to reactivate them, get them talking again, because I miss that. I miss not being part of that group.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun to have that interaction. And I know as far as like writing classes, so one of the ladies who attends Bear Creek Writes, she's actually getting a degree, I think with U of H downtown in creative writing. So if you're looking for, actual coursework, you could do that. But there's also like the master classes you could do. There's lots of different authors online who have, some have just like free YouTube videos, like Brandon Sanderson. He just loves to get out there and like have some of the courses he's done on YouTube. So if you want to do something like that, you can listen to Brandon Sanderson talk. I also really love the, and I think I'll list it later on my resources slide here, but the Writing Excuses podcast is a wealth of information for all things writing, no matter where you are in the journey. So there's lots of stuff out there. And also, I know people are like, oh, Twitter is just, 148 characters or whatever of just people, with memes. But I've actually learned a lot of the things for my writing journey from Twitter with the hashtag writing community. Mm-hmm. So that's another potential resource for you.
That's great.
But there's lots of things out there.
Mm-hmm, there are. There's also a lot of really good books that can help you through the process as well.
Yes, definitely lots of great books out there. Many of them in our library system.
Yes.
Thanks for the question, Elizabeth. That was a great one. All right, let's go ahead and move to the next slide. So now we are going to be talking about publishing. We're going to talk about the different routes of actually getting your book to be published, because there's several ways to go about it, and it's important to pick the one that's the best fit for you.
Yes.
So go ahead and move to the next slide, please, Taylor. So first, we're going to talk about the one that everyone is familiar with, and that is traditional publishing. And a lot of people don't realize this because, you see when like the bestsellers come out, when the new books come on the shelf, a lot of people don't realize the long journey it takes to get that book on the shelf. So sometimes those books that you're seeing on our shelves have been in the process for, potentially 2 years after they were written. It might take that long to get on a bookshelf somewhere, because generally first an author who wants to go this route has to query an agent to represent you to a publishing house. Mm-hmm. And then once you finally get an agent, after probably seeing lots and lots of rejection letters, that a publishing house has to pick you up from that agent. And so because of all that rigmarole and waiting and, not hearing back from people and finally hearing back and getting rejections, it can take, 18 months to 2 years from the time that you're signed with the publisher to have your book published. And that's partly because a lot of publishers publish on a schedule. They can only publish so many books per year. So they're like filling you in on a time slot further down the road. And unless you're like a James Patterson or, a J.K. Rowling, they're not going to be like, let's move you to the front of the line. They're like, okay, we'll get your book out in 2023. Yeah. So you're waiting a couple of years.
Yes. If you are interested in that traditional route, look at the websites of the publishers. Usually they will have submission guidelines. Make sure you read those very carefully. Some will say they do not accept unsolicited material, and that means that I am sending my book to them. They don't want that. Most of them want you to go through an agent. Some do accept unsolicited material, but they still have guidelines that you really need to pay attention and follow. They don't want a copy of your book. They would like a query letter. Some will ask for the first 10 pages or the first 2 or 3 chapters. They usually do not want those things emailed. This has to go through snail mail, and always include a self-addressed stamped envelope so that they can reply to you. Even then, you're not going to hear from probably half of them. I've done this, and I've gotten, I kept all of my rejection letters because I thought this is progress in the direction I want to go. Even if it's a rejection, it means that I am working towards that goal. And so I was very proud of my rejection letters. But
at least you heard back from them. That's more than some people get. So
I know. So like I said, I only heard back from about half of them. Mm-hmm. but if you do decide to go that way, just make sure you read those submission guidelines before you start sending out letters, because they are very specific. And if it's not the way they want it, they're not even going to look at it. So
yeah, you have to kind of treat it like it's like you're doing something for like a job interview. And like,
yes.
you know, when you submit your application, you do it a certain way for a job interview. This is the same thing. You're interviewing to have your work picked up for you. So that's really important to follow it to the letter.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
And then another thing with traditional publishing is that a lot of people I know who I've talked to, they want to go that route because they're like, oh, I'm not good at marketing. I'm not good at social media. I can't, you know, talk people into buying my book. I'll let, you know, Random House do that for me. But the reality is, unless you're another big name author, they're not going to do the marketing for you. They're going to say, you know, what can you do to help promote your book? So it'll be back on you again.
Mm-hmm.
But the nice thing is, if you're not, you know, comfortable with the editing, the formatting, getting a cover, they will do that part for you.
Yes, they will. Even big names. I follow a couple of authors on Facebook and Instagram. Even big authors are self-promoting and doing marketing and offering contests and free books and things. So even the big names are still doing their own marketing a lot of the time. So being a big name author is not going to excuse you from working on self-marketing. So it's something you have to become familiar with.
Exactly. Oh, and I see Elizabeth has commented on your rejection letters, Molly. She says that she loves your perspective because rejection letters mean you're working towards a goal. So she's going to view it that way too. So awesome inspiration.
Good. I'm glad. It is. It means you are working on that goal. And that is worth so much. So many people don't even get to that point.
Mm-hmm.
So it means you're accomplishing what you're setting out to do.
Exactly. And then another thing with traditional publishing is that as an author, you do get an advance on your royalties, and then you get 10 to 12% of royalties after you've sold $10,000 worth of books. So sometimes the royalties that you get paid in advance aren't very big. So that's something you want to think about as well. A lot of people think, you know, oh, I'm going to be the next J.K. Rowling. I'm going to, you know, just sell so many books from the start. But, you know, people don't realize that she didn't start off that way either. A lot of the big name authors, you know, they flopped, they floundered, they struggled before they became these big household names selling so many books.
Mm-hmm.
But don't let that get you down. It's still a good way to go.
It is.
And
yeah.
something else to think about, if you love your characters, if you want things to be a certain way for your cover, the author doesn't have as much control over your work with a traditional publisher. Mm-hmm. So if you want there to be a dragon breathing fire on your cover, but they're like, no, we're going to have a golden sword, then you're going to have a golden sword because that's what they're wanting to do.
Yeah, and if you do children's books that require some illustrations, they will usually provide their own illustrator. You don't get to illustrate your own. So there are those kind of disadvantages to traditional publishing, but if you can, right. Awesome.
Yeah, and for some people, you know, that's the model that works best for them. So if you want to go that route, then by all means, please do.
Absolutely.
All right, let's go to the next slide, please, Taylor.
All right, so there are, I mean, if the traditional route isn't working for you, or you'd like, you know, I'd rather get my book out in less than 2 years, there are other ways to go. There are hybrid publishers and vanity publishers. So we're going to kind of talk about what the difference between those are. A hybrid publisher is usually kind of a small group. They are willing to take chances on, you know, authors that aren't known or a first-time author. They, you know, accept submissions. They go through them, decide which ones they want. They can pay well with their royalties. And then there are vanity publishers, and these are more, well, back to the hybrid publisher, they will provide editors. They're going to do kind of the same things a traditional publisher will, but they are a much smaller group. And so, you know, you're not going to appear in every single bookstore and every single library, but they are a really good way to go for publishing. Vanity publishers, the author basically pays the company to publish their book. Some of these A lot of them are not good. You got to watch out for scams. Some of them do exactly what they say they will. You pay and they will edit. They'll make the cover. They're going to publish. They're going to do some marketing. They might help you with a website. Hybrid will do the same thing, but Vanity, the author is going to pay for that, where traditional and hybrid authors are not going to be paying. So if you are looking into one of those, make sure you check with Better Business Bureau. And there are other sites that kind of will help you to know whether these are a scam or it's a real kind of, vanity publishing, which means, you are in charge. But you may not always, get the kind of information from your editor that you want. You may not be able to you may not see your royalties. You got to watch your contracts. So with all of them, they'll get the job done, but at various costs to the author.
And if you're ever in doubt, the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers of America, they have a really nice subsection of their site called Writer Beware. And it's not just for fantasy or sci-fi authors, it's for all authors, because they're really wanting to help everybody, which I think is awesome. Mm-hmm. So that's a really great resource for looking out for different scams, not just as far as publishing goes, but pretty much any type of scam, for editing, for cover artists. Like if there's a scam that could target authors, they try to be aware of it. So that's a really great one to bookmark. And just if you're serious about writing, check it on occasion just to be sure everything is legit with what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
All right, let's go ahead to the next slide.
Yes.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about my favorite version, because this is the route I went after lots and lots of research, and that's independent publishing. This is the one that's the most work, but also potentially, if things go well, could have the most return on investment. But the caveat I will say is, if you want to have a nice shiny book like this, where you have a very professional cover, you have it professionally edited, that's not cheap. I'm not going to say here how much I've invested in it, but it's been a considerable amount. And even though it's been on sale for 2 weeks now, it's recovered the cost of the cover and not much more than that, because my cover was not cheap either. So it's going to be a while before I have any return on investment. So for right now, it's just a glorified hobby, kind of. But I'm hoping it'll turn into more than that eventually. But what I love about independent publishing is that, number one, I was fascinated with learning all about the publishing and like all the moving parts of it. Like that just fascinated me as a librarian. So it was cool to learn about. But I also liked having control over every step of the process. But again, that does mean a lot of work, because I had to research cover artists to find somebody, again, who wasn't a scam, because nobody wants their hard-earned money taken away from them. I had to find an editor who, once again, wasn't a scam. So for things like that, you definitely want to see if people will give you sample edits to see if you can work well with them. I highly recommend that. I also had to learn how to format my own work, or you could also find a professional to format for you. But I'm kind of stubborn and I wanted to learn how to format it. So I fought with Microsoft Word for a week. I said some words I shouldn't say in public to Microsoft Word. And then I bought a software called Vellum, which then made my life easier. And there were like angels singing as I was formatting. It was beautiful. So I learned how to format that way too. Then the fun part is you get to do all your marketing. So like you get to be the inflatable waving arm guy saying, buy my book. It's awesome. Buy my book. But remember that the other publishing industry ways will have you also doing that too. So you should always be saying, buy my book, no matter which way you're publishing it. But with independent, you definitely have to do a lot of that from the beginning, because otherwise you're just going to be like a small fish in the big ocean. So I had to get on Twitter, which I swore I would never do. I'm now on TikTok, which I also swore I would never do. So I'm totally ridiculous. I don't even know who I am anymore with all this marketing stuff. And believe it or not, like a lot of librarians, I'm like an introvert. So the fact that I'm here talking to y'all about this is just mind blowing. Like Amy of April 2020 doesn't even know who Amy of 2021 is. It's crazy.
That's great. Writing, publishing no matter which way you go, whether you do traditional, hybrid, or independent, it's a business. And if you really want it to become something more than just a fun hobby, then you need to write a business plan, and you need to be prepared to spend some money.
Yes.
Whether it's on, getting an editor or cover art, or if you want to, Amy had some, show you mine, some awesome bookmarks made with her cover on it. If this is what you want to do, or however you want to really market that book, you are going to have to be prepared to pay some money. But write it out as a business plan, because this is your business. And if you want it to be good, you gotta have a plan.
Exactly. And I forgot what I was going to say related to that. It'll come back to me eventually. But when you're independent, you also get to choose the way you publish. And some people want to do ebook only, because then, like with a cover like this, as a librarian, I'm like, I need to be able to hold my physical book in my hands and like smell it and all of that, creepy librarian stuff. Like, I needed to have this. But having it in this form is more expensive, because I had to pay for the ebook cover and the print cover, which added some, cost to everything. So some people only go ebook now, and that's okay. Some people like me are obsessive and want to go print and ebook. You can also pick if you want to be Amazon only, in which case then you can enroll in the Kindle Unlimited program, which a lot of authors go Kindle Unlimited only. But a caveat for that, if you want to be in libraries, you can't be in libraries, then it's not going to work out for you. So that's why I went wide, which means that I'm available on all storefronts, because, like, number one, as a librarian, I was like, I need libraries to be able to get my book. Like, that's my priority. That's, if nobody else buys my book, I want a library to have it, and then, like, I can say I'm happy. But I wanted to make sure I was wide for that reason. So that meant I had to go to Ingram Spark, which distributes to libraries. I had to learn how to use Drafted Digital to distribute the ebook to other places, and then of course I had to learn Amazon too. So you get to choose how you publish if you're independent as well. Whereas the traditional and hybrid, they'll put your books everywhere because they want all the money to flow to them and to you as well. So they get to take care of that for you.
So is there different kinds of formatting for ebook and then for your physical copy book? Did you have to learn two different kinds of formatting for the two platforms?
So yes and no. So with Vellum is like my favorite purchase of 2021 so far, which it should be with all the money it cost. But with Vellum, it's really, really smart and slick, even though I'm mad that it's for like Mac only, because I'm like a desktop PC girl, but I have like a really old MacBook I'm using it on. If I were going the path of least resistance, I could have just had one file for both, but I had to be extra and have like a cool title page and cool chapter headings, because I was like, I'm going, full bore with this. So I had to learn how to format the ebook versus the print, because with the print, I could, do the cool headings like that. But one thing I learned is that it's all because of the dark mode you can have on phones. But those cool headings, you can't make them be like a transparent PNG where like the black part would go to white and things like that. It would just be like the image with like a white box around it and look kind of ugly.
Okay.
So I had to format them separately for that reason. So like the ebook, I don't think looks as snazzy and cool as the print one. So again, print one, superior, much prettier. You can hold it in your hands. You can smell it. I mean, I guess you can smell your tablet, but it's going to smell like, everything you've ever touched.
Absolutely is. Yeah,
so, yeah.
It's those are interesting things you don't really think about beforehand until you get to things like the formatting for e versus physical, and then dark screen and white screen. So
and even as a librarian and as a reader, like I never thought about like formatting a book before, and like you just think, oh, it just like magically appears like this, and now I can read it because like it has magically appeared. But no, like somebody had to put the people who do like the formatting all the time, they can probably do it in like 10-15 minutes. But then you have people like me learning how to do it, like writing with Word for a week and using unkind words to my computer before buying Vellum and being like, oh, this is wonderful. I can do the same thing in 2 hours instead of like an entire week.
Mm-hmm.
So I have after this journey, I have like a lot of respect for every book on our shelf. I'm like, oh, wow, like people invested their heart and soul into you.
Yeah, they really do. But I think the extra work that you put into that really sets it apart, because you don't see that quite so much anymore, probably because of the work that it does require. But it really makes it stand out. So it's a neat thing.
And it was fun. I'm now obsessed with doing stuff like that with Canva. So it's like Canva and Vellum are my BFFs for publishing. And Scrivener, I guess I can't leave that out. I should show Scrivener some love.
Yeah.
But back to the routes for independent publishing. So
yes.
The nice thing with indie publishing is that even though you don't get an advance or anything, once you hit publish, once people start buying your book, all of the royalties flow directly back to you. They don't go to your publisher, whoever they may be, whether it's hybrid or traditional. 70% of the royalties go back to you. And you might, for people who don't know about publishing, you might be saying, well, why only 70%? But that's because you're still working with aggregators and storefronts like Amazon. Ingram Spark has to distribute it to places. Drafted Digital has to distribute to places. So they need to have a cut too, as is fair. So we get 70%, which is still pretty nice.
That's very nice.
Yeah, it's better than some of the other ways. So it's a lot of work, and it's like I said, it's gonna be a while before I dig myself out of the hole I'm in. But I'm hoping to get there someday, and that'll be a lot of fun.
That's great. Yeah.
All right, so let's go on to the next slide. Okay, so here are some resources that I've learned about and have used over the past year. So for people who do want to learn about self-publishing, or even people who are just, wanting to learn more about like formatting and all of that, I definitely recommend Self-Publishing Formula. They're a website. They're also a podcast. And sometimes the podcast is just like really interesting authors to listen to. So even if you don't want to go the self-publishing route, there might be some interesting information there. I have also joined some really cool Facebook groups. So my two favorites are listed there. So Wide for the Win, they're called that because they want their books on all storefronts, available everywhere. So because that was my obsession, I'm like, yeah, I'm all in for that. I need to go there and see what y'all can teach me. And then 20 Books to 50K is another one. And that's a really cool group because it's got, I forget how many thousands of authors are in it, but all kinds of authors. And they share different marketing tips and just different information. But the reason they're called 20 Books to 50K is because the goal is, if you write 20 books, not in a year, just like over the span of your author career, eventually you should be able to earn $50,000 a year, which would mean that you could retire and become an author if you wanted to. So I was like, yeah, I'm all over that. I just need 19 more books and I'm good to go. So don't worry, HCPL, I'll be here for a while. You can't get rid of me that easily. But there's a lot of like helpful people there too. So those are two really awesome Facebook groups that I've learned so much from over the last year. And then the next is author Joanna Penn at The Creative Pen. And she's one I just started listening to recently, but she's really interesting. She also has the Creative Pen podcast, and she just has a wealth of information for pretty much every aspect of writing and publishing and authorship. So I really recommend her. And then the last resource I listed is David Chesson with Kindlepreneur. And so I know that sounds like a very Amazon-y site, and it is to an extent because they do a lot of resources related to Amazon, but he has information for pretty much every step of the process as well. So it's good to just go there, poke around, see what he's got going on. And I will say, for people who don't want to invest in Vellum, because Vellum is pretty expensive and it's only for Mac, he has a new formatting system that's beta testing right now called Atticus. And so Atticus should be coming out hopefully in a few months to people who want to format something that's Windows-based and probably cheaper than Vellum. I don't know what the price point is, but I'm guessing it's going to be cheaper than Vellum. That might be something to keep an eye on too if you want to do your own formatting.
That's great. Yeah.
Do you have any resources too you wanted to share, Molly?
I can't remember.
You
There
didn't
was
know
a
there was
book,
going to be a pop quiz.
I know. There was a book I read that I really enjoyed. It was, he's done all of his work through independent. And that's where he really talked about making that business plan. I just listened to it audio while I was driving, which is good. But when it's stuff like this, you want to be able to flip through that book, and I need to be able to write stuff down. So I didn't retain quite as much from it because there was just so much good information, and I wish I could remember what it was called, but it was a really good book. But there's a lot of good books, and there's a lot of good websites, and there'll be some based on the genre you're interested in. So you just got to find your group that really kind of connects with you and your styles.
Yes, it pretty much for every part of the author journey, there's something out there for you. So, Google it, go to YouTube and look it up. There's going to be something there for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like now I'm heavy in the marketing part. So I'm looking up how to do Amazon ads for this. So that was half of my day doing webinars on Amazon ads, which is not as exciting as it sounds.
Yeah, we need to do another thing about marketing. Marketing is something where I'm very, I have not, it takes a certain amount. I don't know. I just haven't been able to really put myself out there. You kind of got to just be able to say, hey, look at me, look at my book, buy it. And I've had a hard time with that. So marketing is a weak point for me that I really need to work on. And
I think most authors, we would rather be in our writing caves, hunched over our computers, people will just, they'll love me. They'll love my book. They'll find me somehow. We would rather be doing that and not worrying about the marketing part of it. So I totally get that.
Yeah, it's hard to put yourself out there sometimes, but it's what you got to do. So yeah, I'd rather be writing than marketing, but it's definitely part of it, no matter how you publish.
Yeah, it's hard. I kind of feel I think it was Mad TV who had the character Stuart who was look what I can do, look what I can do. So every time I'm tweeting or doing a TikTok thing, I feel I'm Stuart going, look what I can do, look what I can do. Which I'm oh, this is ridiculous. I'm a grown woman, but that's what you got to do to get your stuff out there.
That's what you do. Yeah. So it's good. Do we have any other questions?
Yeah, well, while we look for questions, let's go ahead to the next slide. But it looks like there may not be any more questions yet, but please feel free to submit any if you have them. But we do want to let people know that we have more stuff coming up in July, and maybe we'll think about if people want to hear about marketing, maybe we'll talk about marketing some more then.
Yeah. The July one will involve more children's writing as well. So if you've got children or young, teenagers who love to write, they're definitely welcome to join us in July for the next Camp NaNoWriMo. It's great to get kids writing. I've got a daughter who loves to write, and she wrote her first, I think it was a 10,000 word book when she was about 11 years old. And I was just so proud of her because that's a huge amount of writing for an 11-year-old.
That's awesome.
And it was really good. And every time you write, and I've noticed that with my own stuff, every time I write, it gets a little bit better and a little bit better. And so being able to start young, by the time you get to my age, you'll be an amazing writer. So we definitely encourage the children to join us in July.
Yes, so we hope people will keep an eye on our HCPL events calendar and our Facebook and YouTube channel, because we're actually going to be doing them twice a week in July, because we're going to have one set for kids, one set for adults. So you'll get to see me and Molly again, along with some other staff members, which will be a lot of fun.
Yes.
And if
talented people.
Yeah, and if people have topics you'd like us to cover in July, please let us know. You can email me at my branch at bc@hcpl.net, and I'm sure Molly wouldn't mind if y'all emailed her at Crosby. So give us that email address too.
We're cy@hcpl.net.
We'd love to hear, what do people want to hear about for writing? What interests you? Because we love talking about writing, and this is fun for us to do. But if this is going to help people out there too, we would love to help you however we can.
Yes, we certainly would. So if there are, let's see. Thank you, Taylor. She would like to hear about marketing, so we'll have to maybe look into that. I'm glad you found this to be informative. We appreciate you joining us today for our Camp NaNoWriMo. This is the last one, but the others are available. You can go back on YouTube, right, Amy? And
We sure can.
The previous ones. We had several back in November. We've done, this is our 4th one for April. So you can go back and look at anything that we've put out. The write-ins are a lot of fun with some fun prompts, and they just really kind of get your juices flowing. So we're very glad that you joined us today, and we hope that this has been informative and enjoyable. And so if you love to write, join us again. Join Amy's writing group at her library.
Yep, look for BC Writes. We'd love to have more people.
I need to join BC Writes.
We'd love to have you too.
I love it.
We have one coming up the first Thursday in May at 4 o'clock. So if people do want to join that, we have that information on our Facebook page.
All right, that's great.
But we thank everyone for joining us today. So check out all the great programs at Harris County Public Library on our website, www.hcpl.net.
Yes, thank you for joining us.
Bye-bye.